The rise of the Anglo-Saxons, 410 to 939 AD. In the year 410 AD, a significant chapter in British history began to close. The Roman Empire, which had ruled over Britain for nearly 4 centuries, was under severe pressure from barbarian invasions on the continent. Emperor Honorius sent a message to the Roman cities of Britain, telling them they would need to look after their own defense. The legions departed, leaving the island vulnerable and exposed. Roman administration collapsed, and towns that had once thrived began to fade into ruin. Into this vacuum came new peoples from across the North Sea. Germanic tribes, the Angles, Saxons, and Jutes, began arriving on Britain's shores. At first, they may have been invited as mercenaries to help defend the province from raids by the Picts and Scots. However, the newcomers soon began to carve out their own territories. Conflicts arose between the native Britons and these settlers, as the newcomers seized land and established their own rule. By the middle of the 5th century, waves of Germanic migrants were pouring into Britain, bringing their language, customs, and pagan beliefs. The traditional story, told by the monk Gildas in the 6th century and later by Bede, describes how the British king Vortigern invited Saxon warriors, led by Hengist and Horsa, to fight the Picts and Scots. Once settled, these warriors turned on their hosts, seizing land for themselves. Whether entirely true or partly legend, this narrative reflects the chaos and violence of the age. Throughout the late 5th and early 6th centuries, the newcomers founded several small kingdoms. The Angles settled in regions that would become Northumbria, Mercia, and East Anglia. The Saxons established territories in what became Essex, Sussex, and Wessex. The Jutes primarily settled in Kent and parts of the Isle of Wight. Each kingdom was ruled by local kings, often fighting one another for territory and influence. Despite frequent warfare, Anglo-Saxon society began to flourish. New settlements grew where Roman towns had fallen silent. People built wooden halls in villages. The Anglo-Saxon language, which would eventually evolve into Old English, began to dominate daily life, replacing the Latin and British Celtic spoken during Roman times. Religion played a crucial role in transforming Anglo-Saxon society. Initially, these new settlers were pagans, worshipping gods like Woden and Thunor. But by the end of the 6th century, Christianity returned to Britain, driven by missionaries from both Rome and Celtic regions like Ireland and Iona. In 597 AD, Pope Gregory the Great sent Augustine to England. Augustine landed in Kent and converted King Ethelbert, establishing the first archbishopric at Canterbury. From there, Christianity spread across Anglo-Saxon England, reshaping its culture, laws, and art. As the 7th and 8th centuries progressed, certain kingdoms rose to prominence. Northumbria, under kings like Edwin and Oswald, became a center of learning and Christian culture. Monasteries like Lindisfarne and Wearmouth Jarrow produced scholars, including the Venerable Bede, who wrote a detailed history of the English church and people. Mercia also grew powerful under kings like Offa, who built the massive earthwork known as Offa's Dyke along the border with Wales. Despite their achievements, the Anglo-Saxon kingdoms faced new threats in the 8th and 9th centuries. The Vikings, seafaring warriors from Scandinavia, began raiding coastal settlements. Starting with the attack on the monastery at Lindisfarne in 793 AD, these raids grew in scale. By the mid-8th century, Viking forces were no longer just raiding, but seeking to settle and rule. The Great Heathen Army, a large force of Vikings, arrived in 865 AD and began conquering significant parts of England. Several Anglo-Saxon kingdoms fell under Viking control, with the Danes establishing authority in a region that came to be known as the Danelaw. However, one kingdom held out, Wessex. Under King Alfred the Great, who ruled from 871 to 899, Wessex resisted Viking domination. Alfred reorganized his military forces, built fortified towns called burhs, and negotiated treaties to secure his realm. He also encouraged education and learning, ensuring that Latin texts were translated into Old English so that more people could read them. Alfred's leadership preserved Anglo-Saxon identity and laid the groundwork for a unified English kingdom. After his death, his son, Edward the Elder, continued the fight to reclaim lands from the Danes. Edward, together with his sister, Athelflaed, the Lady of the Mercians, gradually expanded control over much of England. Athelflaed, ruling Mercia after her husband's death, proved a capable leader, building fortresses and leading armies to victory. In 927 AD, Edward's son, King Athelstan, achieved what previous kings had dreamed of, the unification of England. He defeated other regional rulers and declared himself king of all the English. Athelstan extended his influence as far north as Scotland, gaining respect from European leaders. His rule marked the beginning of a truly unified English kingdom. The period concluded with Athelstan's death in 939 AD. Though challenges still lay ahead, including continued Viking threats, the foundations of the English nation had been firmly laid during these centuries. The Anglo-Saxons had transformed a post-Roman island into a patchwork of kingdoms, and finally, into a single, powerful realm. Their language, culture, and laws would shape England's identity for generations to come.